Welcome back into the Lombardi Line on a Tuesday. This show, as always, presented by DraftKings. We are live on VSiN, the sports betting network, alongside Will Hill, who's in for the one and only Michael Lombardi today. I'm Stormy Buonantony. Make sure if you missed any of hour one of the program today, you can always download the Lombardi Line in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find Shoulda Bet More that Will Hill hosts every single week, and you've got a great immediate breakdown with Gil Alexander of the Super Bowl. When's the next edition coming out? When's your next pod?
Usually Monday and Friday. So we'll start to transition a little bit more, do some other sports, basketball, baseball previews. It's the good thing about the extra week in the NFL now, and it goes so much longer, and you look up, the season ends, it's Valentine's Day. Only a couple weeks till March Madness, the conference tournaments. And once the conference tournament starts, you're in good shape, because then you got games on during the day, games all the time, Selection Sunday right around. Then before you know it, warmer weather, the Masters, baseball, NBA playoffs. So that lull between the Super Bowl and the conference tournament is not as long now that the season's longer.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I felt like this NFL season, and college football especially, went by ridiculously fast this year. But now with the Super Bowl in the rear view, and you talk about trying to get into all these other sports, and I mean, I know you've been doing a great job of covering everything during football season as well. But what big tickets cashed for you so that you have more money to put it toward college basketball or toward Valentine's Day for the wife? I'm sure that she would prefer that you put the money that way. But how do we do? What were the big bets?
Well, this is a tough Valentine's Day, because Sunday's Super Bowl, it's the Sunday's Super Bowl, Tuesday's a snowstorm. So if you are a last-minute procrastinator,
you're in trouble.
You're in a little bit of trouble here. So I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat here. We got a foot of snow outside, but it was a good. I did have Flacco at 60-1 to win Comeback Player of the Year. I was shocked I was going to cash that ticket. I bet Hamlin first, then I bet Flacco, then I bet Hamlin again as a hedge. I was shocked they gave it to him. I really was. I guess there were enough people that just left Hamlin off the ballot and figured, hey, he didn't play enough. But it was a decent awards market. Struck out on Coach of the Year, struck out on MVP. Had Purdy 22-1. It had a beautiful hedge opportunity with the Ravens that Christmas night to take the 6.5 and maybe middle it. I wish that's one of the big regrets I had this year was not getting off that, because that was a perfect opportunity where if San Francisco wins that game, Purdy's going to be the MVP of the league. So it was an okay award season. The Flacco bet helped. Again, I was surprised they gave it to him. Do you get involved with these awards markets at all? Did you get involved with Comeback Player of the Year?
I didn't, and I'm mad at myself because we talked about it a ton on the show, because I was beating the drum for pretty much anyone but Lamar Hamlin. Like, I made an argument for Flacco a number of times. I even made an argument for Baker Mayfield at times because of where his numbers comped with Geno Smith last year. For me, I felt like, and I don't want to by any means take down or lessen what happened to Damar Hamlin. The man died on a football field. It's remarkable that he was able to get back out there and be in the NFL this year. But I kind of feel like he did his victory lap, so to speak, for lack of a better way to phrase it, last year. He got an award at the ESPYs and was recognized there, and he did all of these different things. And then on the football field this year, it was more of a special teams type of a role. He logged a couple of stats, but he wasn't an impact player. Joe Flacco, the Browns had to go through 5 quarterbacks this year. He was literally off his couch and ended up leading him to the playoffs. So I liked that Joe Flacco won it. And kudos to you on a 60-1, and anybody who had those big tickets. I know the first time we mentioned it on the show, he was 250-1. So awesome from that standpoint.
I was late to the party. I know people 151, 200-1. Some of the books I was looking at, they didn't even have them listed. So eventually it was December. I went back and looked at the ticket, December 11th. I was like, you know what? It's probably going to lose, but it's 60-1. Sometimes you make a bet just out of FOMO. You're like, once I see it at long odds, 60-1, 81, something like that, you don't even think it's going to win, but you don't want to have it cross your mind and not bet it, then it wins. And it's almost like emotional protection. So, yeah, I was really surprised they gave him that ticket. It was an interesting awards night with the Coach of the Year being a tie and then it going to Stefanski on a tiebreaker. I think the lesson from the awards, and not to make this a whole award segment, you can get some great numbers late in the season. I saw one book, Stefanski was 80-1 in week 13 maybe when they lost to the Rams. So that's pretty late into the season. I remember Dable last year was 30-1 with 2 or 3 weeks left. So, that this idea that these markets are perfect, that the favorite's always going to win, you never know with human beings. Things change quickly. These markets are very sensitive. I feel like the writers, the people who vote on it too, they don't really think about this stuff year round as much. They don't put as much thought into it as we do, where we're obsessed with the odds and who's favored. I think they just get their ballot and go, I vote for this guy, and this guy. So there's some money to be made. You can get some great numbers. Stefanski, like I said, 80-1. Flacco was at a huge price. So man, if you cornered the market with these awards properly, you could have really done well.
And to your earlier point, like Flacco was not even an option to bet until halfway through the season. So some of these markets are definitely in flux throughout the course of the year, and there's a lot of opportunity to get better numbers. Your boy Chris Felica, by the way, who you guys, of course, do such an awesome job with the Bear Bets podcast, the gambling group chat. He's texting me, giving me grief right now. He said, all I heard was that Stormy doesn't like Hamlin. That is not true. It's not what I'm saying. I just thought that there were better options out there, and Flacco ended up winning, so let me live. Anyways, as it pertains...
It wasn't sensitive on your part. He died once. He didn't need to die again at the end of you. That was really, really harsh.
Remarkable story. It's terrifying. I can't believe that it happened. But anyways, moving on. Super Bowl, because you were texting me throughout the week that you had intel on a variety of very interesting props, including one that I just need to let you take the reins on. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. So let the people at home know about some of these props.
So the word got out that the Gatorade was purple. There were some people texting me that Usher was going to expose his nipples, which was available at certain sports books, which got home. But then there was controversy. There was controversy in a couple of these. Now, nobody's going to feel bad for anybody because you bet these and you get what you deserve. But you mentioned yesterday, the national anthem, some books had it as an over. Some books had it as an under, depending on if you count the second brave. And, of course, read the rules. This is why... these fun props, it's fun to get involved, but you don't want to have to hire an attorney. You don't want to have to sit there and, file an appeal based on the ruling. So that was a controversial one, the over-under on the national anthem. And then the first song, because the first song on the playlist was My Way, but Usher himself didn't sing it. The first words out of his mouth, I guess, were the words to Caught Up. So there was, even if you got intel on this is going to be the playlist, you didn't cash that ticket because it wasn't graded as a win. So a lot of controversy again, though. You bet these, you get what you deserve.
Will, people were hating on the Usher performance, and maybe it's just like a my generation thing. There was something that was going on with the mic early on. So at first I was like, okay, this is a little bit slow for me. Once the guests started getting brought in, once I saw Luda, I was all in, Will. I was bumping like I was 15 years old at a house party. Like I was having the best time. So I loved Usher. I thought it was great.
He's incredibly talented.
He's such a good dancer. He needed a towel, though. I can't even walk without tearing my meniscus, but somebody needed to get my boy a towel, though, for the sweat coming down. It was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. It's just so weird how long it goes. I mean, you have this intense football game. You're playing for the Super Bowl. We go to halftime, and then a concert breaks out. They go to the 19 different guys on CBS. They give their little takes on the game, and then you have a 10-minute Usher performance. I mean, it's such a long break. I remember Nance saying at some point during the game that the 49ers went 101 minutes of real time between first downs, which is really hard to believe. So it is strange. Not that the Super Bowl halftime show is going anywhere. I know it's part of the culture. It's part of the draw of the Super Bowl, but it is strange how a concert just breaks out in the middle of the game.
Well, let's blame that for why the 49ers offense wasn't able to take advantage of the Patrick Mahomes interception out of the halftime break. Like, let's just blame it on that for now. They were just a little bit rusty. That's why it had nothing to do with the pass plays from Shanahan. Just, the halftime was a little bit too long. These last couple minutes here, because we're going to continue this Super Bowl conversation throughout the course of the next hour. We've got the 49ers managing editor of Niners Nation, Kyle Posey, who's going to join us in 15 minutes. We'll also have VSiN's own Adam Burke join us, talk through the Super Bowl futures odds for 2025, because there is never it's never too early to get back invested into that market, let me tell you. But so that'll be great. But we do have some news that came in this morning, which I think was a little bit interesting, because now we're officially in the off season. It's franchise tag season. It's lying season with the draft coming up here in the next couple months. T. Higgins, it was reported that from the Athletic this morning that the Bengals expect to franchise tag Higgins this year. What do you think about that? Obviously, Joe Burrow trying to keep his wide receiver group together.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about the cap implications to know, hey, this is a good move or not a good move. I know he's a hell of a player, and you want to keep that team together. So it makes sense. That's one guy off the market. I know a lot of these teams would love to poach him, the Chiefs, some of these other teams that need a receiver. I mean, he could certainly fill that role. He's he's young enough, he's good enough where you can sign him for a decent amount of money and still feel pretty good about it. But Cincy will be an interesting team. They really regressed on defense. I think the question with Cincy, I know everyone loves Burrow. You got to start to wonder, Burrow is one injury away from, you got to start to worry about the durability of this guy, because he's always banged up. Yeah. I mean, he's had a bunch of different injuries. You could say they're flukes or whatever, but as great as Mahomes is, the one thing about Mahomes, he never gets hurt. He rolled the ankle last year, played through it. He banged up the knee that one of those seasons on the QB sneak, missed 3 or 4 games. But for the most part, Mahomes plays. Burrow is in and out of the lineup a lot. So I think that's sort of an underrated and an unsung thing here with the Bengals. Can they keep their quarterback healthy, going forward?
Yeah, that is a good point. And something I kind of regret not asking Josh Klingler when he joined the show, chief sideline reporter, is who he thinks the top team in the AFC is to really contend with Mahomes and maybe be that team to knock them off the pedestal. I'm curious to know if it would have been Joe Burrow. But you asked about the numbers and the cap implications of it. It'd be a 1-year guaranteed contract offer sheet for Higgins, $20.7 million. And, it's interesting for the Bengals as a team. They've been kind of hesitant to use the tag historically, but willing to in certain situations, a la Jesse Bates in 2022, AJ Green in 20, which, wasn't the best situation. But before that, the last time they used the tag was 2013. So obviously something that they don't do all the time, but important in certain situations, including T. Higgins. We are going to hit the break here. Minus $4, by the way, for the next team odds for T. Higgins. So if the franchise tag, if you think that is ultimately what's going to happen, as our guy Caesar says, free money. You have to lay a lot, obviously, but it's like the information game when we get to the draft. Certain things, when you get the intel, if you know it's going to happen, the juice doesn't really matter if it's going to hit. So that'll be a conversation for another day. Let's get into the 49ers side of things, reflecting from Super Bowl 58 with Niners Nation Kyle Posey when we return.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the Lombardi Line. While our guy Michael Lombardi is making the trek back home to Ocean City, we're so fortunate to have the one and only Will Hill joining us on the program today. I'm Stormy Buonantony. Continuing our Super Bowl 58 recap talk, we'll bring in Kyle Posey, now managing editor of Niners Nation. And Kyle, as a diehard, lifelong San Francisco 49ers fan, every time someone has asked me how I'm doing, my response has been physically ill. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I think they're expecting a positive response, and we're not going to fake it, right?
No.
There's no way to fake that. Not well, but no, it's good. I mean, we all saw it coming. They had plenty of chances. Superman did what Superman usually does. So I'm doing about as well as possibly capable,
Kyle, the 49er fan, does he defend Shanahan and say he's our coach, we can win with him? Or are they sort of fed up with the close but no cigar of the last 4 or 5 years?
It's tough because on one hand, they're here every year, it seems like, whether it's on the doorstep of the NFC Championship or in the actual Super Bowl. So there's not many options when you go out and look at the coaches, the coaches out there, who's going to do better than this. But on the other hand, maybe is there somebody else? Is it time to turn the page? So I think there's a few, I don't think there's one right answer. In my opinion, though, people still believe in Shanahan. He's going to be the guy moving forward.
Yeah, I think so too. I think eventually the dam will break for the 49ers, and Shanahan's done so much to get them here, he and John Lynch, to build out this roster. But I wonder, as you look back on Super Bowl 58, and you mentioned off the top so many missed opportunities. They had the early lead, but were never able to put the game out of reach. What do you think, looking back, was the most damning or most difficult or frustrating part of how that game played out?
So pointing it down to one singular is just impossible because their best player fumbled on the first drive of the game as they're going in to score. Fast forward to the third quarter. They have an interception on Patrick Mahomes, who nobody has talked about, by the way. And if they go down and score there when they have the ball in plus territory, I don't want to say the game's over, but it's going to be very difficult for the Chiefs to come back. Even in the fourth quarter, in overtime, they have chances to stop the Chiefs with the lead, and they don't do that. So there are just so many opportunities that they had to put the Chiefs away, and not just put them away, but put it into where it was like a double-digit game where they need 2 scores to come back, but they didn't. And they allowed the Chiefs to hang around. And when you do that with Patrick Mahomes, the inevitable is going to happen, and it happened.
Kyle, what's the biggest gripe you had with Shanahan on Sunday, if you had one? Was it getting away from the run? Was it not using a timeout before the first half where you could have gotten an extra possession, maybe gotten a field goal range? Or was it the overtime deciding to go on offense first?
You actually don't mind going for it on overtime or receiving the ball in overtime. If you do that, though, you have to score a touchdown, and they did not do that. I would say the lack of creativity in the running game, they did have some early success, but it was with all the motions and, moving parts that they used before the ball snapped. And they didn't really do that. It was really turn the ball and hand it off to Christian McCaffrey, and that just didn't work. The Chiefs' defensive line and front seven was just too good to go up against the 49ers offensive line. So there weren't really many gripes with Shanahan that I had. It was just the lack of execution all around. They just did not perform well, and they made mistakes that they did not make all season.
So what happened in your mind the back end of the season? Because there were so many times throughout the course of the year where this 49ers team felt dominant. They have that loss to the Ravens on Christmas, and it felt like they were just never really getting to that same level of greatness that we saw numerous times throughout the beginning of the year. What happened in your mind, and how are the 49ers in the future going to be able to sustain that and not just be a regular season team, but be a Super Bowl caliber and Super Bowl winning team?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can point to the strength of schedule, because when they did have to, quote unquote, step up in class against these playoff caliber opponents, it was more of these one possession games and not the blowouts that we saw earlier in the season. So maybe it's as simple as that. There were injuries, there's no doubt. And even in this game, they lost one of their best players, Dre Greenlaw. They had Debo and George Kittle in and out of the lineup. So they're going to have players who can be healthy on the field all game, and that wasn't the case in this one. Moving forward, I think they have to get younger. I think they have to inject some speed on both sides of the ball. I think they're going to have to invest in their offensive line. Like, if Brock Purdy is going to be your quarterback moving forward, you can't have day 3 picks along the offensive line outside of Trent Williams. That's just not going to be a recipe for success. So they're going to have to invest up front and protect Brock Purdy, and they're going to have to get better in the secondary as well.
If Purdy continues to play well, you're going to have to pay him at some point. Is the plan to pay him a couple years down the road, or you just how do you handle that in terms of the quarterback situation?
That's going to be a question that I do not envy them, and they're going to have to make that decision. So with the quarterback, knowing just when any quarterback has success, you almost have to pay him, right? Unless you offload him for a future or for a first-round pick. But how many teams are going to trade a first-round pick for Brock Purdy? Probably not many, based on where he was drafted. So common sense says they're going to have to pay him. I would wait as long as possible, right? I would maybe extend him with that 5th-year contract, but you can't do that because he wasn't a first round. So it is a very tough position for them to be in, but I would wait as long as possible and try to get as many good players, right? As many prominent players as you can while Purdy is still on a rookie contract, and just try to load up on talent.
Kyle, sticking with the theme of next year, the 49ers are the favorite right now across the board to win the Super Bowl next year. Do you think that they are poised and in a position, especially playing in the less difficult NFC side of things, to get back to this point? Do you believe that?
Yeah, I do. And it's more a process of elimination, right? So the Lions, they're probably going to be back. But the Eagles, I think they're trending in the wrong direction. The Cowboys are the Cowboys for as long as every time they're in the playoffs, they can't be trusted. The Rams were a good story, but they weren't supposed to be good this season. The Packers, they have Jordan Love. He's probably going to take another step forward, but their defense left a lot to be desired. It's like when you just go down the list of teams in the NFC, there's not a real one that you could point at and think, hey, they're going to take down the 49ers. So I do think they're going to be the favorites in the NFC once again. And it would take another upset from a team like the Lions for them to not be knocked off ahead of the Super Bowl.
How do the players feel about Shanahan in terms of, hey, 10-point lead, we blew it a few years ago, 10-point lead again. Shanahan has a reputation now. Do they buy into this reputation? Do they feel like, hey, it's a matter of time before we get over the hump? What are your thoughts here on the 49ers in terms of that?
Yeah, I would imagine it goes back to, hey, we're here. We have the team. We have the core group of players. They have a bunch of good players, more so than any other team, I would say, in the NFL. So because of that, because of what Shanahan has built, because of the style that they play, because of the consistency that they win in, it would be hard to give up on him, right? It would be hard to say, hey, he can't get it done. While he hasn't, but they are so close, and they're always so close that it's hard to believe that, you wouldn't be confident in Shanahan moving forward.
Kyle, appreciate you taking some time, especially in a week that is no fun for any of us. You're awesome, and I hope your day gets better from here.
Appreciate it. You guys too. Take care.
Thanks, Kyle.
That's Kyle Posey. Make sure you check him out. Niners Nation doing a great job as their managing editor. But I totally get where he's coming from. It's frustrating, but the bones and the foundation is certainly there for the window of the 49ers to not be particularly short-lived. There's still some more time for them to get to the mountaintop.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the idea that you'd move on from him, you could be the harshest Shanahan critic, and I've been critical of things, I think, fairly. Like the Rams game a couple years ago, I thought he got conservative before the end of the first half against Green Bay. I thought that was ridiculous the way he handled it. I wish he stuck with the run a little bit more, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's a few yards away from winning a Super Bowl. If they can get that first down, 2nd and 5 with a couple minutes left, for everything that happened, for all the missed opportunities, they are 2nd and 5 with 2.5 minutes left. A first down there, you're basically, especially if it takes 2 plays to get it, you're going to trump Kansas City of all their timeouts. You're going to get past the 2-minute warning, and you're going to have Moody, who had a decent day there, kick a field goal to win you the Super Bowl. So it was right there. I really thought it was going to happen too. I really thought Mahomes wasn't going to get the ball again. They were just going through the Chiefs defense so effortlessly. The first play over the middle to Debo. Then they had another decent gain, a 5-yard run from McCaffrey. It felt like it was set up perfectly to drain the clock, kick the field goal, and get out of there with a win. So that's about as close as you can come to the Super Bowl without, again, not to rub salt in the wound, but to me, that's the most painful loss anybody's had in the NFL in a very long time.
Well, I would say both of them that the Niners have had to the Chiefs. I mean, you think two of the 3 rings they've had in the last 5 years have come at the expense of the San Francisco 49ers. But the fact that, like, there were so many times where you felt like the game was in the 49ers' grasp. And I look back to that game 4 years ago. They're up 10 in the 4th quarter.
With the ball.
With the ball. And then they still have that opportunity down 24-20. And they, the pass heard round the world from Garoppolo to Emmanuel Sanders. And then you have this instance where it's again late, and it feels like you have every opportunity in the world to win the game, to put it away, to not give Patrick Mahomes another opportunity, and it happens. And you know what? Credit the Chiefs. It makes me sick. I hate it because I would like this to be a rivalry, right? You get one, we get one, and this is a fun AFC, NFC battle for years to come. But right now, it's very one-sided. The Chiefs are the team to beat. And for a group of guys that I think has been very likable, generally speaking, I cannot stand them now. And I'm tired of it, and I'm tired of the winning, and I can't wait to see somebody knock them off the pedestal, and I hope that it's the San Francisco 49ers. And I'll leave my passion at that because we have to hit the commercial break. But that was fun. I appreciate Kyle and his insight there. We're going to look forward a little bit more when Adam Burke joins us in studio next. He has an article out at VSiN.com right now looking at a few long shot options already for next year's Super Bowl. Some teams that you might not expect. We'll get into it right back on the Lombardi Line after a quick timeout.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the sports betting network.
If you're looking for a betting edge on college hoops, now that football is officially in the rear view, have no fear. The VSiN experts have you covered. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber with an introductory offer of just $9.99. Subscribe today. You'll get our daily best bet emails, 24/7 video access, the upcoming college hoops betting guide with bracket breakdowns, plus full access to VSiN.com with our exclusive betting splits on every game. Don't miss out, though. This is a limited time offer. VSiN.com/subscribe is how you can sign up. Again, just $9.99. That's VSIN.com/subscribe. Managing editor of that tremendous website, Adam Burke, joins us in the flesh here live from Circa Resort and Casino. Talk a little bit of college hoops and, of course, NFL futures, because you've got a new article up on the website right now, breaking down some teams that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about at this point, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, there's really not a whole lot of equity in taking favorites, I don't think. Tying your money up for a pretty low return. To me, I'm kind of looking at some teams that hopefully will get better throughout the course of the offseason, or at least have some upside to perform to the level that they were expected to, or teams that, are going to look a lot different, like, for example, the Seattle Seahawks, right? I mean, they hire Mike McDonald, who was a phenomenal defensive coordinator, both at Michigan and with the Baltimore Ravens. And I think Ryan Grubb, his offense from the University of Washington translates really, really well to the NFL. A lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of getting the ball to guys in space, a lot of trying to get numbers on the outside. Those are things that all of these coaches are trying to do at the NFL ranks now. So I think a team like Seattle at, a 60-1 type of price, at least according to DraftKings, and as always, shop around because you can find better prices prices in some other places for some of these things. But to me, that's a team that has a ton of talent on both sides of the ball. They just need somebody to kind of bring it all together. And I realize they're with the 49ers. They're with the Rams. I totally get that. Completely understand it's a tough division. But at the same time, I think that's a team with a lot of upside and a couple of coaches that I think provide a lot of upside as well.
Is there another team, Adam, in the NFL that you look at? I mean, you look at the just landscape. The AFC is just loaded with good teams, good quarterbacks. Now Herbert's going to get Harbaugh, so they might even get better. Anybody else you take a look at other than the Seahawks? Yeah,
I think another team, one from the AFC specifically, from the AFC South, where I think that's still a wide open division, despite what we saw from the Texans late in the year and despite what we saw from C.J. Stroud completely shredding my Browns in the playoffs. I think that division is still pretty wide open, and I think a lot of people are going to come into the season forgetting about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville did not have the season that they were supposed to have, obviously squandered that opportunity in the final weekend to make the playoffs. But Trevor Lawrence is still a good quarterback. He was banged up a little bit late in the year. They had some issues on defense. They had some issues in various places throughout the course of the season. But I don't think that division is a runaway. And obviously we saw with Houston, you win the division, you get a home game, anything can kind of happen. We saw Houston win. We also saw Tampa Bay beat Philadelphia. So even though they came out of weak divisions, if you can win a weak division, get yourself a home game, that's a pretty big positive for you. And I think for Jacksonville, in that 30-1 range, I'd probably want a little bit better on the price. These are more considerations at this point in time than anything else. But I think that division is wide open for them to get a home game, in that first weekend of the NFL playoffs.
Well, and speaking of those divisions with some parity, you mentioned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who do get a division win with Baker Mayfield. They've been talking about running it back with that group as much as possible. But a division that we talked about a ton this year as being anybody up for grabs with anybody except for the Carolina Panthers, obviously. Although at the beginning of the season, you thought maybe with Frank Reich and that group that there could be some hope. There wasn't. But you were looking at the Saints potentially as one of those teams in a division with some parity.
Yeah, now the difficult thing for the Saints is they are in salary cap hell. They have a lot of things that they have to figure out this offseason to really make for a very competitive roster. That being said, I've watched a lot of Baker Mayfield. Maybe Tampa Bay has figured out the key to unlock him, but Dave Canales is gone now. He's the head coach there with Carolina, so they're going to be missing him. I don't really think that the Falcons are going to be that great of a team next season either. Now, obviously, they could make some big changes with Raheem Morris coming in. They're going to make changes at the quarterback position. But the Saints continuously have a really, really good defense. If they could figure out the pieces on offense, if they could stay healthy, keep in mind, they lost receivers basically on a weekly basis, it felt like, throughout the course of this past season. Again, it's exactly what I talked about. If you can get one of these teams in there at 70, 80-1, something like that, where they get a home game in that wild card round, that's a pretty interesting position to have. So I think in a division that's very wide open, where I don't think the Saints are that far behind the Falcons or the Buccaneers, then, you're getting kind of a balloon price on a team that could very well be live to win its division when all is said and done.
Adam, I haven't heard your thoughts yet on the Super Bowl. Did you have a major problem with anything Shanahan did? Not calling timeout early before the end of the first half, getting away from the run a little bit at times, or taking the ball in overtime? Any issue with any of those?
Honestly, it's easy. I think it's kind of cherry picking to blame Kyle Shanahan, especially because they had another double-digit lead. But honestly, that game really dramatically changed with the freak injury to Greenlaw. Yeah. That was one where early on in the game, they were getting a ton of pressure. Kelsey was not getting targeted. And then Greenlaw goes down, and all of a sudden, they're finding Kelsey. They're not getting the same pressure on Mahomes. They're not collapsing the pocket anymore. They had to make a lot of defensive adjustments on the fly to losing one of their more dynamic playmakers on that side of the ball. And to me, that's where the game kind of changed a little bit. And look, despite all of the things about that game, they had a great chance to win it still at various points throughout the game. I just think Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo they make play calls. It's what they do. And I think that was ultimately, to me, I think Greenlaw, and then just the execution in like the 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts for Kansas City on both sides of the ball. To me, those were the differences in the game.
Yeah, I don't think the Greenlaw element of it has been talked about enough. What a freak accident.
Right?
Talk about bad luck for the 49ers in humongous games last year, obviously, with Brock Purdy going down on the opening offensive drive, and then Greenlaw, where he's just trying to make a great special teams play, trying to celebrate for a second, running out onto the field, and and unbelievable. And now who knows how long he's going to be out with the start of next season around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I mean, people that, follow the network regularly know I'm a Cleveland sports fan, right? So I've seen it all. I am so deeply emotionally, mentally scarred from basically every sports outcome of my lifetime, except for the Cavs winning the title. And honestly, that one didn't mean that much to me because I'm not an NBA fan. And I still looked at that Greenlaw thing and it physically hurt me. So everything that I've been through, still with how freaked that injury was, and of course my first thought was about you because I'm like, here we go again.
Will has heard me say it ad nauseum today, but like physically sick at various moments throughout the game, and especially the end of it, where like my family is out here in town, we're all watching together on the couch, and like you go from this, wow, we can really do this. We could, especially with the Super Bowl being in Las Vegas, my hometown where I'm born and raised, and my team is in this game. Could have been a perfect storybook ending. But instead, fold like origami, Will. But Will, I know you wanted to talk some college basketball, so let's get my spirits up a little bit. I know you joked around earlier that that's not something you're typically known for, but I think that this is the moment, man. You can do it for me.
All right, Adam. Yeah, a lot of people, I think, once the NFL season ends, turn their attention to college basketball. A lot of people also have been following it this whole time. But anything you like for tonight, and any teams you think just in general is flying under the radar here in college hoops?
Yeah, I think a couple of things real quick for people who are transitioning over to college basketball, as well as the NBA now, because a lot of people, do primarily look at football. There's a lot of stats out there. There's a lot of data points. Sample size is quite significant. Now, rely on those metric sites, rely on those rankings and rating sites, because they are going to tell you a lot about these teams. They're going to tell you a lot about who's good, who's not good. And you can also use some of those to look at, teams in line for some positive or negative regression. And those are things I think you really want to take a look at here at this time of the year. I will say tonight's card was a little bit tough for me because I look way down the board. I look at a lot of small conferences, the one bid leagues. I feel like I find a lot more line equity in those types of conferences and with those types of teams. There aren't a lot of those games here today, but there are a couple that stood out to me. The first being Marquette. They're a 4-point favorite against Butler. In the first meeting, Marquette was 24 of 73 from the floor in that game, only 0.847 points per possession. It's their second worst offensive output in a Big East game this season. This is an offense right now, though, that is rolling. 1.23 points per possession over their last 7 games. They basically can't miss from 2 or 3 at this point in time. And when you look at the first game, they didn't finish well at the rim. They had an offensive rebound advantage. They had a turnover advantage, lost the game because they shot so badly. I think that's a positive regression spot, at least in this head-to-head matchup for Marquette, where they are laying a number on the road at the Fieldhouse against Butler. But I think Marquette -4, my top play here for tonight.
I was just going to say, is there any fear of a look ahead with having to go to number 1 UConn next?
No, I don't really look. I think that because of the nature of college basketball, because every game matters so much in terms of your seed line for the NCAA tournament, in terms of your resume and your profile, I don't really think about too many look-ahead spots, especially not in a conference like this. If you're talking about Gonzaga looking ahead to St. Mary's or somebody like that where there's only a couple of good teams in the conference, absolutely, I think that's a possibility, but not here in a loaded conference like the Big East where every game is really important.
That's going to be a great game, though, number 4 versus number 1. And you had something on Iowa State, Cincinnati as well?
Yeah, this is a really interesting game here. This is a flip favorite situation. Iowa State's been a really good team, but they've been a really, really good team at home. A lot of Hilton magic for them here throughout the course of the season. A lot of people like Cincinnati here. I'm kind of scared by the line. I actually like the under 136 in this game. Iowa State's numbers way better at home, especially on offense. Now they're on the road in a tough environment against Cincinnati, so I think under 136 is the play there.
You're the man. Thanks for coming in studio.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Adam Burke,
Thanks,
ladies
Adam.
and gentlemen. Check out all of his work at VSiN.com, doing a great job for us as our managing editor. And Will Hill has more college hoops when we come back, wrapping up today's edition of the Lombardi Line after a quick break.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Welcome back to the Lombardi Line. This week on DraftKings Sportsbook, new customers can deposit $5 and get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Download the app and use the promo code VSiN when you sign up. That's VSIN, DraftKings Sportsbook. the crown is yours. Thank you to Adam Burke for stopping by in studio, as well as some of our great guests that gave us perspective on Super Bowl 58 from each side. Josh Klingler, who is the Chiefs sideline reporter on the Chiefs radio network. Kyle Posey, managing editor of Niners Nation. Great to dive into all that. But Adam gave us a great note, as will we get to our pro tip of the show. We do one of these every single day on every show. Searchable on VSiN.com by sport and by show. But talking about a lot of casual bettors who were really focused in on the NFL, making that transition to college hoops or the NBA. He said specifically for college basketball, keep an eye out for those analytics sites and rely on power ratings. You agree with that?
I do. I think it's well put, and you follow Adam's stuff, and that's one guy: baseball, college basketball, NFL. Yeah. You'll learn a lot, not just getting picks. It's teach a man how to fish kind of thing, because Adam's really sharp and really dives into the numbers, knows what numbers to dive into. So can't recommend enough diving into Adam's stuff. But yeah, definitely the transition period. First of all, I mean, you guys are talking off break about drinking Modelo's, making plans. I feel so left out. You got everyone in Vegas, like Lombardi's in Vegas. You guys are in Vegas. I feel like the kid that doesn't get to go out for recess, just hanging here in the snow. You guys are making these great plans. But yeah,
we gotta get you down here.
I know. I'm coming there in April. But yeah, it's definitely a transition point where football season ends. And I don't know how you felt. I sat there Sunday, and it felt like it was a month between the AFC and NFC title game and the Super Bowl. That extra week, it just felt like it took so long to get there. I don't know if you felt the same way, especially with your team playing in the game.
See, I think maybe if I wasn't a fan of the team, it would feel like it was more drawn out, because when you get ready for the Super Bowl, it becomes kind of that paralysis by analysis where you're talking about the same things every single day. But as a fan personally, and as someone too on the betting side who's looking at all of these different markets and trying to find different avenues of value and opportunity, like I was extremely engaged. So I feel like every single day I was finding something new and interesting to talk about. And I really enjoyed the lead up until I didn't, obviously.
Yeah.
More after that. The day of, that's when I started to feel it. Like every half an hour, getting closer. Every half an hour felt like 10 hours for me before kickoff.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I went back and listened to some of the shows I did, podcasts I did before the game, and I really think it played out where a lot of people didn't have conviction on a side. I picked the Chiefs, but I didn't feel great about it, and I said that, hey, this is probably going to be a game. We can sit here for 2 weeks and talk about every different angle. It's probably going to come down to a play, a coin toss. It's probably a toss-up game, and really, if anything, the 49ers were the better team for most of that game, and obviously just getting done. So just a brutal loss, but you'll be back, I guess, I hope, for your sake. You get another opportunity, but that's a painful one.
Yeah, the 49ers are, again, favored at plus 550 right now to win the Super Bowl in 2025. We'll see if they'll be able to get there. As Dan Campbell said in his press conference media availability after losing the NFC Championship, you never know if you're going to get another opportunity.
100% true.
And for me in my lifetime, too, as a 49ers fan, I said this to Michael yesterday. It's funny because the 49ers fandom community, we love to talk trash about the Cowboys, right? Because can't get to an NFC championship, They still have a more recent Super Bowl win than the 49ers do at this point. So me, in my adult life, the 49ers have been involved in 3 Super Bowls, 3 games where you had opportunities and lose. Yep. And the only one that we've won in my lifetime, I was 2 years old and have no recollection of it. So it's very unfortunate that I feel like we're the Bengals, where you're the team that just gets knocked on. It's just, it's soul crushing. But it's all right. And hopefully we'll get through, and it'll be a positive thing moving forward. And we're not going to have to talk about the Super Bowl too much longer. The initial 2 days after the big game, you like to talk about it. Make sure you vet through everything that happened, get the most juice out of the squeeze, and then you move on to college basketball, to your earlier point, to the NBA. For somebody like me, I love the National Hockey League, so I'll get more into hockey at this point. But it's interesting. It's tough because football has just dominated our lives for the NFL since July with training camps open, and now you come to this abrupt stop. How much do you get involved in the NFL draft stuff? The combine obviously coming up in a couple of weeks. Is that something that you have a lot of interest in or not?
Yeah, I like to bet the draft. I know you don't really have a lot of options in Vegas, or they come and go. Like I've heard mixed things about the number of things you can bet in Vegas, but it's become a good betting vehicle. I remember a couple years ago I had a good draft. Last year it wasn't as good. So, these books, they don't like to put markets on stuff where they feel like they're not going to win, but it's definitely interesting from a betting standpoint. I think, I don't know how interesting it'll be this year from a number one pick standpoint, because we all assume Williams goes first, but then you have the whole angle of the Bears and will they trade Fields? So it's fun. I mean, the NFL does have a good offseason with their free agency in March, then into the draft where there's a lot of, that's its whole event. And then before you know it, you look up and it's not that long until July, August, when preseason starts. So it's still year round.
So when Adam Burke joined us, he gave out a couple of his plays on college hoops tonight. He liked Marquette -4 against Butler, also the Iowa State Cincinnati under. You have a couple plays in college hoops tonight as well. What's your favorite for the day?
I like Cincinnati on the money line. I agree with a lot of what Adam said. This is just not the same Iowa State team when they're away from home. They did have a nice win a week ago in Texas against the Longhorns. But Cincinnati, they played Houston the other night, and Houston and Iowa State have very similar styles defensively, a lot of pressure, very aggressive, and I think that'll serve Cincinnati well, playing someone similar to Iowa State. This is a big game for Cincinnati. They're right on the bubble. I think Lenardi had them last 4 out, so if you can beat a top 10 team like Iowa State, that probably puts you on the right side of the bubble. And again, I just think it's a good matchup. And anytime you're that aggressive on defense like Iowa State is, like Houston is, that does leave you a little bit vulnerable on the offensive glass. So Cincinnati is a good offensive rebounding team. I could see them getting a lot of second chance opportunities. Should be a raucous atmosphere with a chance to not punch their ticket, but at least put themselves on the right side here of the tournament. So I do like Cincy on the money line. I lean with Adam in terms of the Marquette laying 4. They are a much better team. They're a very good offensive team. There's a revenge aspect there. I think you made a good point, though. That's a look-ahead spot to UConn. I do believe in these look-ahead spots, these situations. So I think that's enough to keep me away from it. And plus, that line is moved. I think it opened 2.5. If you didn't lay 2.5, it's hard to lay 4. So either pass or look for a better opportunity in-game. Another one I looked at, I didn't pull the trigger yet. I don't know how much you've been paying attention. Kentucky has played awful defensively.
Terrible
defense. They
are
laying 8.5. It's hard for me to imagine them laying 8.5 against anybody. They are playing Ole Miss, so it would be a lean to Ole Miss. And boy, I don't know if Calipari will mix things up and start to play a zone, start to slow this game down. If he does, maybe the over's not a good bet. But to me, you just blindly bet the over in these Kentucky games because they can score and they can't stop anybody. They are just a dead nut over team. They basically have to get into like the mid-90s to beat you. So at some point, you figure they play a better defense, but I can't lay 8.5 with them against anybody. So I might end up betting Ole Miss. And I was texting with a few people about this the other day. I was tweeting about this. I got a bunch of responses and stuff. I'm curious what you think because I know you're not locked into college basketball yet, but I wonder, does Calipari, Kentucky, has that sort of run its course? Because now it's 15 years he's been there. That's a long time ago. They won a title, 2012. So you're talking about 11, 12 years ago. Can you believe this? They haven't made a Final Four in almost 10 years. They haven't, I think it was 2015, so 9. They haven't made a Sweet 16 since 2019. He's 65. I know he's still getting the recruits, but I was starting to wonder, is this the end of the Kentucky Calipari run?
Well, I know this sounds bad, but Kentucky always has players. I don't think they have a team. And that's what you see on defense. Like, you don't see team defense. You don't see them playing well. I totally agree with your handicap and thought process of the game tonight, where it's either like you're taking Ole Miss or bust because they're not going to be able to stop anybody. So it's crazy to think Coach Cal, obviously a Hall of Fame coach, that maybe it is starting to feel like it's run its course because they're not performing in the postseason. We remember a couple years ago when they get that early knockout punch in the NCAA tournament, and you're like, how is this happening to a Kentucky team? But that's the way it is right now. I'm interested to see if one of these top teams is going to get knocked off the pedestal. Like UConn, obviously favored to repeat as national champions this year. Purdue and Zach Edey, they seem unstoppable playing at next level. Houston, speaking of defense, Houston's got the best defense in college basketball right now. Will they hold up and do enough? And who's maybe a dark horse? Anything that stands out to you in the national championship odds board?
No, I think UConn's the rightful favorite. It's hard to go back to back, but they have a real good opportunity to do that. Arizona, I would look at Arizona. I know people are down on them because they had a bad loss against Princeton last year in the tournament. They hit a low in the middle of the season, but they went to Israel. They went to Abu Dhabi. I think they just got a little bit tired. They had a dominant performance the other night in Colorado, which is a tough place to win. Colorado's got 2 or 3 legit NBA players, and they went into Colorado and they buried Colorado. So I wouldn't kick dirt on Arizona.
Arizona just always seems to let me down when I bet them in the postseason. But the March Madness is right around the corner. Just about 7 or 8 games left in the regular season. We're going to have conference tournaments to bet on soon, which will be fun and exciting. And then who's this year's Cinderella? That's a wrap for today's edition of the Lombardi Line. Will, you're awesome. Thanks for doing this again.
Stormy B, you're the best. Appreciate it.
Make sure y'all check out the Shoulda Bet More podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcast. And Will's also part of that gambling group chat on the Bear Bets pod. That's a wrap for today's edition of the Lombardi Line. Same time, same place, coming up tomorrow.
Get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers